There we go. The recording has started. Okay, so and then we've got a system for questions because we figure there'll be a lot of questions tonight between everybody that's here in the room and the people that are online. And because we want to make sure everybody, all our presenters can present, we've handed out index cards. Hopefully you got index cards. And so if you have come up with questions throughout their presentation, write the name of the presenter who's presenting and your question on that card, and then we'll collect those questions and go over them at the end of the presentation. For all of you that are online, we ask that you just put it in the chat, and we're going to monitor the chat and make sure that all your questions get pulled from the chat. And hopefully we can get a little bit of order to all that. All right, so that's next. So with every meeting, we like to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI. And we want to talk about how the current policy and administration choices disproportionately harm people of color. And many people in our Spokane community are working hard, and we're going to hear from them tonight, to improve on policies that will align with a world that is equitable and inclusive for all. Hi, Jennifer. Don't trip on anything back there. There's a lot back there. And you're going to hear from these groups tonight. So people experiencing the housing crisis are disproportionately people of color, and the housing crisis is inseparable from the history of slavery and genocide. Next slide. All right, and then our land acknowledgements. We talk about this land acknowledgement as a group and how important it is to acknowledge the tribal nations and the land we're on. But we also want to go one more step and talk about how does that, how is that a part of what we're talking about tonight? And with the housing insecurity disproportionately affecting tribal communities and Native families, it's really important that we have policy solutions that benefit them as well. So next slide. New members, shout out to our new members. We've had a lot of new members. This is quite a list just in the last couple of weeks, I think, that we've had all these people join. I didn't put last names up there because, and I'll quote the Washington State president on our action meeting. She said, "We're a potluck, we're not a restaurant." You know, we are all hands on deck trying to get a hold of people, make sure that people feel welcome. And I have not contacted these people to ask them if it was okay to put their full names and their information up there. So I wanted to shout out to them and thank them, but I didn't want to put too much information in there until we actually really made that good connection with them for joining. But thank you to all our new members. All right, next slide. Here's our agenda. So we've got a packed agenda tonight. We're going to start off with Empire Health and the Camp Hope update. We're going to go through the Catalyst Project with Catholic Charities. We're going to talk about the Village Co-Housing Group. And then Sherri will talk about the Valley Homelessness. And at the end, as I already said, we'll have a Q&A for speakers. I wanted to let you know how to, next slide. You can, this meeting is being recorded, and at the end of the recording, probably tomorrow sometime, I will post this on our YouTube channel. Our YouTube channel is public. You just search LWV Spokane in YouTube and it will pop up and you'll be able to watch this recording. And I also include links to anything we reference in that recording. So if you're looking for links that we posted online or handouts that you were given, they'll all be included on our YouTube channel. Next. These are some upcoming important events, and we'll show that again at the end. And then next. This is the email address for our Affordable Housing Homelessness Solution Committee. And we'll go ahead and put that up again at the end, but I just wanted to show it to you now and know that we'll get you that information again at the end. So now with that, that's all of our housekeeping. I'm going to hand it off to Dawn, and Dawn's going to come up here and talk about, introduce her group. Yeah.
So I want to introduce Zeke Smith and Meagan Vincello from the Empire Health Foundation. Zeke is the president and Meagan is the program director of the Spokane Community Homelessness Initiative. And they are the organization that is kind of overseeing the funds that are coming in from the Department of Commerce, right-of-way initiative to connect people in Camp Hope with services and housing, you know, better places to live. And they're kind of the key organization that is working with all the different organizations down there that are providing services and housing. And one of them is Jules Helping Hands, and Julie's there, but yay, so we're thrilled she's here. So they're gonna just talk about what's going on at Camp Hope, the challenges, the successes, the current status, you know, what's happening next. So we're so thrilled that they made time to come here and talk to us. So thanks so much. Thank you.
Thanks, Dawn. I will say a few words first. There's a cool little bead up here, by the way. And then hand it over to Megan. I was hearing myself through you. Thanks. So we have a flyer that folks should have in the room, and I think it's available for folks online as well, which is our latest and greatest. It's kind of the data, some data, some numbers and some information about what's happening at Camp Hope. We're happy to share a little bit more about that specifically if you want, but I thought I'd step back a little bit and just give you a sense of how we as a community got to this place in terms of what Camp Hope is and what's called the Right-of-Way Initiative. Camp Hope, I think, you know, there are other folks in the room who could actually speak better to how we got here, but has been located just a few blocks to our southeast since January of last year. So it's almost on a year that it's been at that property. Started as a smaller community of homeless individuals who were protesting the fact that there is not enough housing in our community to meet people's needs. There's both not enough and there's not enough diversity of housing options. And that really is a function of the investments we have or haven't made as a community in addressing the needs of our community members. So the population quickly got large as potentially 700 individuals that were at the camp, one block. It was pretty concentrated. If anybody had gone by there in the summer in particular at its peak, it was pretty amazing to see how many people were really in that one location. And really those individuals in that camp were largely continuing to tell us that they wanted better housing options. In the midst of that process, the governor, responding mostly to what he saw on the west side of the mountains, was concerned about the number of homeless encampments on, in particular, what's called right-of-way properties that are owned mostly by Department of Transportation, but that are state-owned properties. And so through last year's legislative process, budgeting process, the governor put forward about $45 million that went directly to 5 counties and 11 to address 11 encampments on right-of-way properties. So that was King County, Pierce County, Thurston County, Snohomish County, and Spokane County. The Department of Commerce was given those resources to work with the Department of Transportation and Washington State Patrol to clear those properties, but to do so in a way that ensured that people got into better housing options. Department of Commerce then surrounded that by some other resources that they had, also resources that the governor had made available, particularly for housing in last year's budget or the current budget. And so we ended up with a total of about $145 million across the state. And of that, Spokane was eligible for about $25.5 million, and specifically to address Camp Hope, to both clear the property, but to ensure that people there have access to better housing options. So short story is there was an opportunity for the city of Spokane, Spokane Valley, and the county to put in a proposal for how to use those resources. They did that. The Department of Commerce used that information to begin to figure out how to allocate resources. You'll hear about the largest investment that they made in a little bit from a partner, which is called the Catalyst Project. Was the purchase of a motel space by Catholic Charities. And then the other resources initially came to Empire Health Foundation for, as Dawn mentioned, coordination of outreach and engagement services. The city had actually proposed that United Way would play that role. When United Way kind of really got a sense of the scale and the scope, they were like, we're not ready to do this. We're not in a position to do it. And so Department of Commerce asked us if we would step into that role. We're not really a traditional player in this space either. We did not really engage in homeless services or in even in really granting many resources to organizations in this space before this year. I say that just to acknowledge that Empire Health Foundation, I think for a lot of the service providers, folks are like, who is playing in this space? But we've spent the last year really trying to figure out how to be a part of the solution in our community around addressing housing and homelessness, much broader and bigger than just Camp Hope. I think most folks in the room recognize that and know that. We saw this opportunity challenge that we had as a community, that if we didn't really step up, we would potentially lose these state resources to really try to address this issue at Camp Hope, which we see so visibly in our community at this point. So we jumped into the space. We've been working primarily with 4 contracted organizations, partners: Jules Helping Hands, Compassionate Addiction Treatment Spokane, Revive Spokane, and the Spokane Low Income Housing Consortium. The first 3 organizations have been working together on developing a coordinated peer navigation process where they have peer navigators, people with lived experience, who are working with every single individual that was and is at Camp Hope and working alongside of them as they move into and through better housing options. So even as that path has additional veers and turns, they'll continue to work with those individuals, and we continue to have resources to support that. And then we've worked with the Spokane Low Income Housing Consortium to what we called kind of shake the housing trees, to figure out really what's out there currently, where might there be opportunities to expand on that, and where do we have big gaps in our system that we need to collectively then invest in other kinds of solutions to make sure that we have a large enough and diverse enough and integrated set of options, not just for the Camp Hope folks, but then for other folks who are homeless as well. So they have recently kind of completed that initial tree shaking. We've been grabbing the fruit on the ground and then figuring out where to move. But the Department of Commerce has, you might have read, has released some additional resources to try to support, in particular, expanding these housing options that are available. We believe that with the investment in the Catalyst Project that you'll hear about, and then these other resources the state has made available, that we can have as many as 365 new housing slots, places for people in a diversity of different options, from detox options to kind of group settings to existing shelter and other temporary and transitional housing options. That is in front of us. It's work for us to do collectively. The money is there, that's great, but we as a community actually really have to put our kind of legwork into building out those different options. There's private sector options there. There's a set of other service providers. So we'll be working on trying to make sure we continue to move people in that direction. Dawn had said we're at the center of it. I would say we're at the back of it. We're just trying to make sure that the right set of providers are in a position to really do what they do best. And that ideally we can do this in a collaborative fashion. That we have an ability for us as a community to come together and chip away, because that's all it really represents at this point, but to chip away at the lack of housing as a real critical issue for why we have such a homeless population. So lots underneath that, lots above it. I'm sure if you've been paying any attention, you can see there's all kind of politics that have been associated with this, but really my message today is just to say that the work is moving. We've had some success already, and we're picking up steam. And I've seen a set of partners who haven't had a ton of opportunities to work together before, really lean into working together and to figuring out how we really address the needs of real community members on a one-by-one basis and say, all right, how do we work with these folks to get them into better housing? It's a long road. It's going to continue to be, but we're pretty excited to be in the middle of it. Meagan's really the one who gets to engage most directly with folks. So I want to give her a chance to share a little bit as well.
Yeah, Zeke said it best. He said a lot of all the things I was going to say. One thing I can say is the service providers that are working down there and the peer navigators are working in ways that I don't know if we've seen before in this community. Getting out of silos of kind of how we've worked in the past to really lean into those difficult spaces and have difficult conversations is kind of what has built and fostered this initiative forward here in this community. And so really it's them, you know, I mean, it's the Julies, it's the Hallies, it's the Lanes, it's the Bens, the Slick, it's all of the people that are working down on site and off-site behind, you know, in the offices doing the work that are really supporting this effort. So I think more than anything, we just appreciate the opportunity to speak with you guys, and we look forward to what this helps transform our community to look like within the services realm for homelessness. So, anything else?
No, we're excited for questions once we're at that point.
Yeah.
We were told we had to stick to 10 minutes.
10 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and everybody here, we provided a handout online for those that showed up virtually, and then we also have handouts for those that are here in this room right now.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right, thank you so much. Okay, next, Jonelle, come on up.
For those of you who don't know me,
Yeah, you have to come up and talk in the mic so they can hear you online. Yeah.
I have never been accused of being quiet, I'll just tell you. Okay, my name is Jonelle Edlin, and I joined the league just this past summer. And then I've been away for a couple of months dealing with a family issue, but I have to say, I'm amazed by everything everyone does. So, I had the privilege when I left my career of working at Catholic Charities for 2 years in the supporting housing unit. And Dave Sackman happened to be my supervisor, and he never fired me I had a very steep learning curve. It was way out of my comfort zone, learning a whole different realm. It was an amazing job, and I only left because of family need. But so I wanted to introduce Dave. He has a wealth of knowledge that he imparted with me all the time to try to help me learn. And he is the managing director of the supportive housing program at Catholic Charities of Eastern Washington. Dave, come on up.
Thank you. And yeah, thank you, Jonelle. And Jonelle's going to hold me to like 5 to 10 minutes. So, you know, I'll try to keep it snappy, because as Jonelle knows, if I get going, it can be a while. So anyway, we won't do that today. My name's Dave. I'm with our, I work with our supportive housing programs over at Catholic Charities. Primarily what I help with is our permanent supportive housing programs. Pretty much any building with the name Haven, those are PSH buildings for us. So we have a lot. I think five singles and three family, with another family one opening very soon. So and more in development. So it's really great work that we get to do. We get to work with we get to work with residents in their apartment, and then really just try to flood as many supportive services and as varied of supportive services as we can for our folks. So it's a housing first model, right? We get the first step is to get into housing, get that piece of stability, and then we're working on whatever stabilization goals that an individual or family has. And there are as many goals as there are people, right? And so we have case management, peer support, employment, support employment assistance, behavioral health, substance use treatment that's available to our residents in the buildings. And so it's wonderful. There's a lot of really amazing people who live in our housing, and it's a privilege to be able to serve them and to help and to do whatever we can to help folks stabilize and meet their goals, whatever that looks like for that individual, for that family. I'm also here to speak a little bit on the Catalyst project. That's our new one. I don't work directly on that, but I've worked with Catalyst a lot, and I've been there a lot, and we've been helping get that project going. Right now, we are starting to fill the building. We're going about 3 or 4 a day is kind of the idea, a work day. So Monday through Friday, and then there's staff there 24/7, and there's security there 24/7. The intakes, we're going Monday through Friday, 3 to 4 a day. Also construction pending. So the building itself has been just a massive remodeling construction. I've been able to see before and after, and I didn't know that amount of work could get done in that short of amount of time to rehab that hotel. It's been remarkable, and that was just what I could see. As is the case with anything like this, you look under the hood and you find a bunch more work to do. So it's been a really great effort by everybody involved to get to that point. So we've got some work still being done there, and so it's 3 to 4 a day, and we're hoping that we're trying to fill the units that are ready, and we're hoping that gives us enough time to get the other units ready quickly. The program itself is same kind of idea, in some ways on a bigger scale. We're providing behavioral health, SUDPs, employment assistance, peer support, and a security team that is on site there 24/7. There's been fence around the property, and so it's they're doing a good job of making sure that if you're driving in, you're supposed to be there. I had a little bit of a hard time getting in yesterday, and I was like, "Oh, that's good." That's good. So, yeah, I mean, it's the program itself. It's got it has there's rules. There's good neighbor agreements that people need to sign and adhere to. It's so it's different than some other projects that have less restrictions on that. So it's not a low barrier program. There are systems and kind of escalating write-up systems, depending on things that happen. So it's different than something like maybe like House of Charity or something like that we have. But it's been we have about, I think yesterday they told me that about 9 folks there. So we've got, plus or minus, I guess, 3 or 4 from that. And it's been great so far. It's a big, anytime you get a program up and running, you're learning stuff every day. And so we're learning very quickly how to do this and how to do it well. And we've had, I think they were telling me one of our first residents had come in, had seen the room and had started crying and was really overwhelmed that of the quality of the room and just that we're able to start a new phase, start a new chapter, a new step. So it's been wonderful being able to serve the handful of folks that we've been able to so far. And we're really excited to be able to do our part to help the community through this project. And in a way that impacts the individual, lives the folks we're working with, because that's, a lot of times we talk about big systems, big projects, not big numbers here, capacity of 100 here, 50, and that's, those are all individuals, and those are all people with infinite worth and dignity, and deserve an opportunity to help. Thank you, Jenna was telling me I was running out of time. This is good. Deserve an opportunity to help meet their goals, and so it's we're very fortunate that we get to do that, and we get to do our part to help the community. So thank you. Are there questions later? Is that?
Melissa, thank you very much for that. That was wonderful. And I see Melissa's in the front row. So come on up. You have to talk into the microphone.
So I'd like to introduce Sarah Ben Olson, and she is the volunteer director of Village Co-Housing Works, which is connected to New Hope, and she will give you a brief summary of the history and then tell you about the group and what the goals are.
Woo! Great job, Melissa. Okay, so I'm short. Can you all hear me? Okay. Hi. Okay, so I'm a longtime volunteer at New Hope Resource Center in Calvert. And I'm, like, as Melissa told you, the volunteer director at Village Co-Housing Works. We are under New Hope's 501c3. So New Hope Resource Center is a 20-year-old, mostly volunteer organization that serves extremely low-income people in the North County. So we serve from Hawthorne Road all the way to the county line. Resources that New Hope provides: we have a food pantry, a clothing bank. Sometimes we'll do minor house or vehicle repairs. We have a necessities bank, and also we do gas cards and what's the other thing? Heat assistance. That's the other thing we do. So in April 2021, our director called for a task force to study homelessness and housing insecurity in our service area, because she'd noticed an uptick in self-identified homeless applicants during the pandemic. And since our county CBDG grant actually prohibits us from serving people who don't have a permanent address, we wanted to find out what other providers would be available in our service area. And what we discovered pretty quickly was that there weren't any. So there or no emergency housing, no showers, no kitchens, no other clothing banks, no other food banks, no shelters in over 300 square miles. That really surprised us. So then our director got permission to temporarily help unhoused persons for 6 months. So if someone comes to into our office and says they don't have a permanent address, we're able to provide 6 months of services for them, and that's all. So next we wanted to find out how many people are without housing in North Spokane County. How are they getting by? And what are their needs? How can we best support these people and also provide better services for our whole community? So again, what we learned surprised us. Nobody knows how many people are living without housing in the rural North County, because the point in time count has never ventured into our service area at all. There are some coordinated entry numbers from 2020. So coordinated entry is the data that service providers in the city collect. So if somebody comes into the city for services, they'll ask, well, what zip code are you coming from? So in 2020, 36 persons from the zip codes that we serve showed up in the city for homeless services. We also know the McKinney-Vento reporting from the schools. Riverside School District and Meade School District are both in our service area. And combined, they had 500 homeless students in 2021. Meade had the highest numbers in the county with 450 homeless students. So Empire Health Foundation gave us a grant last year, and that made it possible for us to provide some temporary housing for our homeless clients during the coldest months of the year. We helped 35 self-identified homeless people last year. Then we surveyed our clients. Surveying our clients, we were surprised to discover that many already fit the point in time definition of unsheltered homeless, but they would not self-identify as homeless. They're living out of vehicles or RVs, camping with permission or renting a spot on a friend's property. They're moving from place to place in their vehicles. Maybe they're just collecting mail at a friend's house, or they're doubling up with friends and family. Many others that we surveyed fit HUD's definition of worst case housing, which is a situation we call precariously housed. These people are at imminent risk of losing their housing. So they're living without lease protections, exchanging work for housing, going without running water, staying in unlivable or condemned housing, or they're staying in an abusive or unsafe situation. So they're just one disaster away from being out on the street. And we know there's nowhere for them to go. So on top of that, many more, about 70% of New Hope's client population live in mobile home parks, where lot rents have tripled since 2019. Okay, mobile home renters do not have the same protections that apartment renters have, and they're much more likely to become homeless. So our task force concluded that solutions to housing insecurity will not be possible without an increase in Spokane County's affordable housing stock. So we invited Charles Durrett, the architect who built Haystack Heights and who has also had some experience building permanent affordable housing for formerly homeless. We asked him to come and speak about community-centered housing solutions that have been proven to work in helping people exit homelessness. Durrett's village-style co-housing model is one we expect to be attractive to the lower density North County, and we find it really important that North County neighbors will welcome whatever project we're suggesting. The village model is also designed to foster community, accountability, and meaning. So Charles Durrett says, co-housing is more economical, efficient, meaningful, and fun than other housing options. So Village Co-housing Works was born out of that lecture. The lecture was on November 3rd. So for the last month, our working group of about 45 community members has been attending weekly meetings, working together to try and get something built. We have a potential site that's been located and it will be donated for the project if we can get it rezoned. In order to do that, we have to convince the county that this is an emergency. Durrett thinks that if we can do that, we'll be breaking ground in a year. So our group of volunteers, some of them are here, is amazing. We have Whitworth students and young business owners donating their time. We have retirees with career experience in marketing and fundraising, and we have a lot of enthusiasm. So right now we're fundraising for a workshop that we'll be doing next month with Charles Durrett and Andrew Heben, who is the director of Square One Villages in Oregon. Square One started like we did, just as a grassroots volunteer organization. And they are now working on their 6th affordable housing project. Their housing is the most affordable in the state of Oregon. So they use a land trust model that ensures all their homes will remain permanently affordable forever. So this workshop will teach us how to do it right so that we're not just fumbling around, but we can learn from what they've done. So there is information on the flyers. If you got one, if you didn't, there might be some over there. I think you guys also have a digital copy of it that will show you how to donate if you're interested, or how to sign up for our newsletter, or we're working on a website. It's almost ready. So the donate button or the QR code will take you to New Hope's website. All donations marked affordable housing will benefit our work. So thank you very much, and I look forward to your questions.
That's some good news. Thank you for all that. Last but definitely not least is Sherri. Sherri, you're up. Come on down.
There we go. Can everybody hear me? Okay, so I'm Sherri Gangitano. I am the chair of the Affordable Housing and Homeless Solutions Committee. We actually, truthfully, we kind of share responsibilities, but I get to be the face, I guess. And then I also run a small nonprofit out in the valley called Spokane Valley Community Advocates. And between those 2 positions, we've been able to make a connection with the city of Spokane Valley through their new homeless and housing coordinator, Eric Robinson. Some of you might know him from Goodwill when he worked there. So I talked to him, and he said that it would be great if I could just give a little update of the differences in policies and how we do things out in the valley compared to the city of Spokane. So I want to give you a little bit of information on that. So in 2022, the point in time count said there was about 80 homeless in the Spokane Valley area. Internal counts put it more at 100 to 120, which is about 13% of the overall count, which is what they've said is about right. Some of the reasons for the increase that they believe is happening is because obviously pandemic economics, people losing their homes and losing their jobs. And then folks moving back into the rural areas because of those sweeps. And then living in their vehicles. It's much easier to find a hideaway in a vehicle or an RV out here than it is in the city. And then also they're originally from the Valley area and they feel more comfortable out there. So one of the ways the city of Spokane Valley is different with their policy starts with the partnership between Amanda Boyer, social work outreach worker, and Officer Pratt, a deputy from the Sheriff's Department. They are the main core of the city of Spokane Valley's huddle outreach team. And they go out and they make those relationships with those who are homeless out in the valley. They know their stories. They've built that connection in a really great way to help them to be able to be interested in wanting to find services or helping them find the resources in order to improve their situation. And the way they do that is there's a online form that you can fill out with a concern, goes straight to Eric, and then from there it goes out to the outreach team, and then they go out and they check it out. So camping is different out there. And the reason I say that is they actually put it into code that there are specific areas where camping is 100% not allowed. If you are camping in those areas, you're going to immediately, be trespassed. You're going to be forced out. But there are other camping areas where, although it is prohibited, that can be put aside depending on the circumstances. So an example would be it's not a health or safety concern. And if the people that are in those camps are already engaged in services, because, you know, you just like with Camp Hope, if you know where they are, you can continue to be having that relationship and getting those services to them, rather than pushing them aside and then having to find them again. And then if they're doing something that's not okay, obviously they're going to arrest them and trespass them. And they do have, they're given 48 hours notice, and all belongings are kept for 60 days for them to claim them. And they're not removed, like, I hate to say it like the city, but they don't just toss them in a truck. They actually pack them up and they actually seal them up and put them away and wait for that person to claim them, which is good. The primary goal is always to connect people to better options before moving to enforcement. And the city of Spokane Valley recognizes that we cannot arrest our way out of homelessness, and the reliance on enforcement as the primary tool is neither effective nor a good use of limited resources. And that's a direct quote from Eric. We only resort to enforcement when a situation becomes dangerous, or when we encounter repeatedly return of the same off-limits locations and refuse offers of assistance or to work with providers. So if they're not willing to work with you, then we're gonna ask them to move on. That's just, we have to do that for safety concerns. This year, we've had quite a few accomplishments out in the Valley area. The outreach team has been successful in getting 36 people this year to enter stabilization for either mental health or substance abuse treatment. 21 people into shelters and 5 people into permanent housing. The city maintains contracts with Hope House and Truth Ministries for 2 beds apiece. And they support other homeless services with a contribution of about $1 million per year. So I know there's some rumors out there that the Spokane Valley should be contributing more. We do. Then some of the things that they've also done is there's a tracking app that they've created that are important tools in mapping and follow-up for camp trash and abandoned vehicle removal. This has helped with 70,000 tons of garbage being removed and cleaned up. Now, some of that's probably illegal dumping, so I don't want to imply that that's all the homeless. And then we've also partnered specifically with Spokane Valley Partners. Everybody knows about them, right? There are food bank and clothing bank out there. David Stone, who's the program manager, said that I could go ahead and mention that in a couple of years, they're going to be taking over the Zeke's business building out on East Sprague, between Flora and Barker, I believe it is. So that's a big jump in space, which means that more services are going to be able to come out to the valley to be able to serve our community. And then they've also connected with the CLC board. They're on other committees in order to have our voice heard, not just the city of Spokane's. And then they work with several different partners in terms of mental health providers, housing providers, developers, and all of that kind of stuff in order to make it more efficient with what we're doing out there, to make sure that what we're doing is going to reach the right goal. And so the last thing I wanted to talk about is they just are finishing up the editing and council approval for their 5-year homeless plan. And so I just wanted to go over that a little bit. There are 3 primary goals that they came up with. Prevent homelessness. Whenever possible, keep people in their homes or provide rapid provide rapid one-time interventions to get them housed quickly. Improve quality of life, reduce trash, loitering, camps, and other related impacts on the community. Provide options for the unhoused to meet needs and minimize community impact. And then, of course, reduce homelessness in moving people living on the streets through the steps needed to achieve and maintain stable housing. And I do know that the city of Spokane Valley is talking about a 20-bed, 24/7 low barrier shelter sometime in the future, and are looking at sites right now. That may not be for, 2, 3, 4 years, but it is in the works. So that's a big improvement to having nothing. And then ensure a full spectrum of needed services available when needed. So obviously Spokane Valley Partners will be a big factor in that. And that's all I have. So thank you.
Okay, all right. Okay, it's question time. So because we need to use the microphone, because we're recording this, I'm going to ask all of you to come back up front. Or whoever wants to answer questions, so that you're close to the microphone to answer these questions, please. And yes, and that was my next thing. Thank you. And we need to collect all your cards so we can go through these questions.
I'll grab them real quick.
Thank you. And then for anybody online, if you want to raise your hand, we'll go through the questions on the cards first and get that taken care of first. And then if you want to raise your hand or post more questions in the chat, please feel free. We got them all. I'm going to just go ahead and get started while they're collecting those. All right, first one for Catholic Charities. We have been told that 100 spots at Catalyst will be for Camp Hope. How long do you think it will be for them to be able to move into Catalyst? Yes, please. I need you to come up to the microphone.
Yeah. I've not been told like a target date necessarily. I think my understanding is that we're going at that clip of 3 to 4 Monday through Friday, construction permitting until we get it full. So I haven't done the math on that, and I'm not really great at that. But yeah, I don't have a necessarily a date that's been communicated to me. Yeah.
Okay, next question is for Empire Health. What can we as individuals or small groups do to further help the unsheltered find housing and stability?
Thanks for the question. Well, I would say one, there's a Spokane Homeless Coalition meeting that happens once a month. You can find that information online. The League of Women Voters is often well represented there, which is great. But it's a good space to find out what's going on in the community. There's lots of organizations, service organizations that are there that you can support. Volunteers are often needed throughout this work at multiple levels. If you're a homeowner and you have multiple homes, well, you might think about whether or not you're ready to rent out. And if so, there's some great organizations to talk to about what it looks like to rent your house to somebody who may have been homeless. That might be scary for folks, but there's a lot of supports and opportunities to support those landlords in that opportunity. I think the work that New Hope is doing that we heard about earlier in North County is pretty amazing. It's pretty awesome to hear about a community that is stepping up and saying, we're going to build 35 houses now and see where we go from there to make sure that our neighbors have places to be that are more stable. So I think there's lots of ways that folks can get involved. And the start to that is just to start to engage some of those folks out there, service providers, organizations that are doing this work. And like I said, if you don't know who those folks are, come to the Spokane Homeless Coalition meeting. It's a monthly meeting. When does it happen? It's the
First Thursday of the month at 9:30 at the Gathering Place.
First Thursday, 9:30 Gathering Place, which is right there on Garland.
Thank you. Okay, next question is for Catholic Charities about the Catalyst project. They want to know specific size, length of stay, general stuff about just the project itself. So.
So the size is 100 to 120. So there are certain units that can accommodate couples. So that's where that sort of flex within the size goes. Length of stay, my understanding is that there's not a like a hard and fast like this. Sometimes there's programs that I've been a part of, it's like 3 months or 6 months or a year or something like that. This one, it's not, doesn't have that. They're folks will be engaging with our service providers, and the goal is to get to permanent housing. As we all know, that's its own challenge within this community. The permanent housing landscape isn't great, and so there's not like as far as I'm aware, there's not a hard and fast like we're only good for 6 months and then you can't stay here anymore. That's not. And part of that, I think, is a reflection of housing market and the difficulty in finding housing. Was there more on that?
Okay, unless whoever asked that question has more they wanted to know. Maybe that was online. Okay. Next question. Can the Hope House closing downtown be used?
So the Hope House, which is run by the Volunteers of America, is not closed at the moment. The Hope House remains open. Actually, I mentioned earlier that the Department of Commerce has provided some additional resources for a variety of different housing options. That includes some resources for Volunteers of America to use or to have access to beds at Hope House for some Camp Hope residents, women. It also includes access to some respite beds that they have there, which is slightly different than their normal program. I will just say that the Hope House is a program that's really needed for women as transitional housing. Got a ton of really great supports that are there, and we as a community have kind of stood this program up, and then we haven't actually figured out how to fund it in a sustainable way. So I think that the city has a responsibility. I think the county has a responsibility. I think we have a responsibility as a community to figure out how we can keep that open. It's great that there's going to be access there for some of the folks from Camp Hope. And more importantly, we need it as a sustainable option for women in our community.
Thank you. Okay, next one. What if the guests at Catalyst seem to be choosing not to make progress toward employment and housing?
There is a and I do apologize. These are some of the details that I'm not as but I tried to get as much information as I could on this, but there is kind of an escalating write-up system for behavior issues that would be up to, I mean, at the top of the chain would be asking somebody to leave the program. So I'll be honest, I'm not sure where engagement with services lands within that system. I think the expectation is that there will be engagement. I apologize. I don't know the detail on that.
Okay. Even knowing you don't have that detail is good information, so thank you. Okay, so are grants available for homeowners to remodel a basement or garage to provide housing? Is that you?
Sure. There's a aspect of affordable housing or a model that's called rapid rehousing, which is really about working with homeowners to open up their homes to be able to lease those houses, those rooms to folks that are homeless. We, as I mentioned earlier, we have some resources that through the Department of Commerce that are available for a couple of different rapid rehousing options. There's an organization called the Housing Navigators, which I believe will be doing some of that through the city. And then we are working with the set of providers that I mentioned before, Revive, Jules Helping Hands, Compassion Addiction Treatment, on also offering some rapid rehousing. Rapid rehousing is a program that does provide resources for renovating or getting the space up to par for somebody to be able to rent it. It's not a significant amount, so if you're looking for 150 grand, you're gonna have to look somewhere else. But it's enough to make a difference on the front end to be able to get space ready to support the homeless individuals who might lease or rent that property in application fees, in other kinds of needs that they might have. It offers up to, in this case, 18 months of rental support, so that's sustainable and consistent rent that those individuals will have. And there's even kind of a mitigation fund that's available in case there are damages that are caused that need to be mitigated after somebody's in that space. So this is really kind of a wraparound set of services to try to encourage private landowners to be and private property owners to be a part of the solution. There's no way that we're going to solve homelessness just through publicly funded and publicly subsidized housing. We're going to need the private sector. We're going to need private homeowners to be a part of the solution. So it's one of those options.
Okay, so I'm not sure who, maybe all of you want to pitch in on this, but how are the various agencies coordinating their efforts for maximum effective outcomes? Reduce duplication of services and not waste money. What data is being kept on the outcomes of various strategies?
Does anyone want to tackle that?
Well, I can give it a shot.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
So I think that well, there's a lot to it. So there are a lot of community forums or meetings or things like that happen or that we do our best to do. I think the Homeless Coalition is a good example of that. I mean, I think most of the folks that that are in this that I can think of are at least on the listserv, or are connected in that way. So I think the Homeless Coalition is a big piece of that. There's and I think there's attempts within the community to be finding ways to do more of that. I mean, frankly, a lot of what Zeke does with Empire Health, at least in what I see, is connecting a lot of the service providers and helping folks get together and find a way to kind of move forward in a consistent direction. As far as data that gets tracked, it depends on it depends on the funding source. Anything that's got well, especially federal, but kind of government funding of some sort generally gets tracked one way or the other. The primary way within this community is through the HMIS system that the city runs, and then is able to generate outcome reports based on individual projects and interventions and things like that. That'd be probably the primary way, but not the only way. And so there's not, I think there's attempts to centralize things as much as possible. I think a lot of it kind of starts with funding requirements and goes from there. And so the federally funded programs are all track the same way and you can, look at the outcomes and compare from different programs and different interventions. But the tracking piece of it in my mind kind of starts with the funder. And so then there are some different systems that are tracking those things. There's attempts to try to find ways to get all of those into the same system. And there's some technical issues with that, but I'd say it's a work in progress. But I think that from what Empire Health was talking at the beginning, I was thinking back at just the years I've been involved with this, and I think there's a real energy within this community, with the service providers in this community, to work together in a way that I think is progress, and it's exciting for me, because it's so easy for everybody's got more to do than they have hours in the day. Everybody's got more to do than they have resources for. And I think that ends up, the folks can end up getting siloed from that. And there's a lot of energy within the community right now to continue to find ways to centralize. And so I'd say it's a work in progress.
Don't go too far.
Okay.
Does Catalyst need household goods for new residents, pots, pans, brooms, etc.?
We don't say no. Absolutely. And I think the best place to drop off any donation would be at our main building, 12 East 5th, with the big, you can see the sign from space, so the big Catholic Charities sign, that would be the spot to go.
Isn't there a website that you put in?
Yes, there is.
Yes, yeah. I'm sorry, yes. We're in our Christmas donation times. Thank you for setting me up on that. Yes, cceasternwa.org. There's a very big, can't miss it, donate button there.
CC
Eastern Wa.
Eastern Law.
Yep.
Okay, we're gonna post it in the chat.
Thank you.
cceasternlaw.org. So I hope this makes sense, but the question is, what about adult family homes? And it's to you, so.
Sure. I'm going to touch on the adult family homes in a second. I wanted to go back just to the coordination question too, and say, it's a really important question. I think if people are paying attention to homelessness around the country, one of the things you see is that communities that are coordinating at a service provider level, at a funder level, at a neighborhood level, are making more traction in terms of addressing this. Not surprising, but a reality. And frankly, we haven't been very good at coordinating efforts in the Spokane area. That isn't to say that we don't have service providers that work really well together. It isn't to say that there haven't been some efforts, but honestly, for being real, we've got some work to do. I do think that Dave's right. There's a ton of really good energy right now. I think some of this, the new funding has actually created places where we have service providers that are working together that don't typically, and they're figuring out, we've created an environment together where there's an opportunity to coordinate. And it hasn't really been an environment that has instigated that. And I think that goes back to the funders. And I'm saying this as a funder, as somebody who is responsible for that as much as other folks are. But I think it's important that we put some pressure back on the funding community to say, you've got to figure out how to coordinate efforts and how to encourage and create space for service providers to do that. The issues that Dave was describing in terms of the data, we're way behind. We don't have a very effective way at monitoring and understanding the effectiveness of what's happening. And that's not Catholic Charities' problem. That's not an individual service provider's problem. That's something we got to figure out together. We've got some of the basic bones. There's a data system that the city uses that many of our providers are in. But we've got some work to do to actually really figure out how we do that together. The adult homes question, I'm going to interpret that as adult family homes as what about kind of adult assisted living environments, of which there are many different kinds and they're funded through different public sources. And part of what we know is that those group home settings are also not funded at a rate that we have enough spaces available. So our providers are in the process of continuing to work with DSHS at the state level, which is one of the primary funders of those assisted living options. And hopefully we can get some more folks into those environments, but the reality is they all have wait lists. So we just aren't funding the kinds of different resources that are needed to provide the mental health supports, to provide people with disability supports, to have really an inclusive environment that they can be successfully housed in. And that's what we see a lot of in the population who are homeless. So there's more to do there, but I think it's part of the challenge. We're working on trying to see if we can use some of those resources from the Department of Commerce to increase that as well.
All right, so next question. Does a village project have IDD community representative, and how can a community partner join? And the IDD stands for intellectual and developmentally disabled persons.
So read that part. Does the village program have IDD community?
No. And how would a partner, a
Okay,
community partner join?
okay, the best thing to do would be to go to, I guess to follow, what would be the best thing to do, guys? Oh, we have an email address on the flyer. Yeah. If you email the email address, and you don't even need, you could just say info, we will send you our latest newsletter, and you can be asked to be on the list for updates about our next meeting times and locations and that kind of stuff. That's the best way to join, is just to on a basic level sign up for the e-newsletter so that you can be updated about what our projects are and what we're working on right now.
Wonderful, thank you.
And if you want to tell me more about the IDD community, I can learn more about it, because
Okay.
it sounds like something I need to learn about.
Oh, good. So I don't know who asked this question. I think it came from online, or is it, who asked this question?
Just can I see it?
Yep.
I think it was Kate.
Kate?
I don't know.
Okay, we'll find out. And then we'll have her contact you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Okay, so that one needs to contact her. Okay. Factor if, wait, I'm on the wrong side. That's why it wasn't making any sense. What does enforcement mean in Boise v. Martin context? You stated if they are not participating in services, is the deciding factor if moved on arrested. What's your position on that, since there is no shelters in the valley?
So I can't speak for the Spokane Valley, but my understanding is that they go back several times trying to get this person to accept services. And the only time that they really force that person to move is if it's a safety or health concern, if it's on private land and, you know, it's causing problems with the owner, you know, in front of a business kind of a thing, or in front of City Hall, which is absolutely prohibited. And I know that it's a trespassing as if it was in the city. It's not, you know, it's, I don't know more than that. But yes, we don't have shelters out there, but we do have the 2 reserved beds at both Hope House and Truth Ministries, where we can offer that to them as well.
Thank you. Okay, so this one's about Camp Hope. Okay, 25.5 million from state to clear Camp Hope for contractors. Question about silos. I'm gonna ask whoever wrote this.
was mostly taking notes.
Wonderful, okay.
However,
Yes,
I did like a 25.5 million of the contractors. I listened to a really good radio program today on point about homelessness. And they pointed out that so often there was no incentive really to save money on building the housing and all of that. And I'm wanting to know, what's the goal in dollar amount spending? I mean, there's a man in Los Angeles who is not using public funding and all of that. He's just building it. He's been successful, and his cost is half what most of the public funded contractors build for. And we need to do something like that.
okay. Does anybody want to take that one on?
And the silo comment was, what does that mean? Twice somebody talked about siloing. I don't know what that means.
Good questions, lots wrapped up in there. I don't know if I use the term silo, but I have been accused of it before. So I would say that silos, the way that I understand it in this conversation, is the recognition that we often, service providers, funders are operating kind of with around what their particular goal and interest is, and there isn't a lot of space for people to work across. So it's this idea that you're siloing around your particular work or your particular, what your interest is, foundations that say, we want to fund education, and that's all we want to fund. We don't care about anything else. So it's really this, I think it's an acknowledgement that if we're going to fix this, we've got to really be able to break down those silos, and we have to be able to work in a more coordinated fashion, which is part of what I think people are trying to do right now. In terms of the funding, you know, it's a loaded question, not in a bad way, but there's a few different elements to it, right? So one is affordable housing is incredibly expensive to build. And there are a whole host of reasons around that. A lot of it has to do with the fact that the kind of most significant resource that's available for affordable housing is federal dollars, and there's a bunch of different restrictions that come along with how you can use those dollars, which mean that local organizations have to hire lawyers and have to hire developers and help to, and you end up with a really significant cost. And I do think it's a challenge. I think it's something we've got to fix, because I don't think we can actually build our way out of the homelessness problem at a cost that is required to do public housing. And that's not a critique of organizations like Catholic Charities that do that kind of work. We need that kind of housing, but I do think we need to look for other kinds of solutions and opportunities as well. There are a number of different kind of private sector options that look at how you can do it for a bit cheaper than in the public space. You asked also specifically about the $25 million that's associated with Camp Hope. Those dollars are first and foremost designated to provide better housing for the people that are at Camp Hope and to close the camp, as well as the other right-of-way camps that are funded across the state. But the resources there are intended to continue to be available in our homeless system to, one, continue to follow those individuals. So to provide case management, peer navigation, the kinds of like warm-handed solutions that are like, I'm going to walk with you and we're going to figure out how we can get you to the right resources to get on a better path. And frankly, those it costs money to be able to do that effectively. We've put ourselves in a position where the individuals that are chronically homeless, the individuals that are visibly homeless, like at Camp Hope, there are a lot of extenuating circumstances that get them to where they're at this point, and it's going to cost us quite a bit to figure out how to resolve that. It takes substance use treatment services, it takes mental health services, it takes all kinds of different wraparound supports that cost money. So what that 25 million actually represents is some capital investment. That's what the Catalyst project is. So that was a significant chunk of that funding. It was more than almost half of it that went to that. And then operations costs, which is about how we get the kinds of staff who are both professional staff who come with the right certifications, but also staff who understand this population and can work alongside them through the process. and then making sure that we have the ability to support their needs. Many of the individuals that are homeless have back rent, have fines from being involved in the justice system that preclude them from getting into housing. We've got to pay those things off. We've got to kind of clear the deck in order to allow those folks to be able to move forward into housing. So there's a number of different types of places that those resources go. Where they're not going is into people's pockets, really. And I know that that's a story that's out there, so it's part of the reason I say it. We are ready and we're totally willing to be really transparent about how those resources are being used with our providers, with ourselves, and alongside of the other partners that are there. But the reality is $25 million is both a lot of money and it's not a lot of money when it comes to actually addressing homelessness. And it's going to take quite a bit more for us to be able to do it in a meaningful way. But I think, at the heart of your question too, we have to look for different kinds of solutions that don't always cost the most amount of money. And I think that my hope is that here in Spokane, we're ready to do that too.
Okay, so we're coming down to the wire here. It's almost time for the meeting to be over. And I really appreciate you all being willing to be here and answer questions and take these questions. So we're only going to do 2 more, which means a couple people aren't going to get their questions answered, but you have their contact information. And so please reach out with your questions after tonight. So the last couple of questions. How many beds at Catalyst are going to Camp Hope and how many to HOC clients?
All the Camp Hope right now. That's filling it. The initial filling up of the building. That's 100% Camp Hope.
What is HOC?
So House of Charity is HOC. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, good question. Yeah.
Just to connect those last 2 questions, the other thing that's worth noting, so Dave, as he said, the priority right now, the prioritization is for Camp Hope. But in order for Catholic Charities to receive the funding from the Department of Commerce, they have to ensure that that property will continue to be available as affordable housing for 40 years. So yes, it's a lot of money that's invested in that property to allow for the kinds of services and the work that they're doing. But that means we've got 85 rooms, up to 120 beds that are available for affordable housing for the next 40 years, which is longer than a lot of us are going to be here. So I just put that out there because it's important to acknowledge. Absolutely, the focus is Camp Hope right now, and there are a lot of people in this community that are going to benefit from that particular investment.
How can you say it's all with Camp Hope if there's only 120 some beds?
It's the sorry, all of the building is Camp Hope. So all of the units in the building. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. So the building will be the filling the building is 100% folks coming out of Camp Hope. And then I think, that's the initial filling of the building. And then, God willing, we can, there would be other sources with us having found housing options for our folks over Camp Hope.
Oh, wait, so come on back here. So for our last question, because it's in that same vein, are there any plans to use other unoccupied motels to get them ready for housing the homeless and provide wraparound services?
Not that I know of, at least as far as we've got our hands full right now. But I don't, if there's other bigger community.
I know that there are additional resources that are available from the Department of Commerce for what's called rapid acquisition, which is this idea that Catholic Charities really did, where you take an existing property that needs minimal, it was actually a lot, but needs minimal mitigation in order to be able to use it for affordable housing. That's really what you would do with this kind of idea of taking an unused motel or an underused motel. I don't know of any other specific opportunities that people are looking at here right now. There is funding that's available currently from the Department of Commerce to support that. I do know of a project that is where folks are applying for potentially, it's not a motel, but it's an existing but unused apartment complex. It's 57 units, so that's one of those. But hopefully there's more opportunity for us in this community to think about how to do that. We've actually foregone some of those resources in the past. So for the, being the second largest city in the state and having one of the largest homeless populations, we've actually missed out on some of the state money, and hopefully we can collaborate and coordinate more effectively and get access to those dollars in the future.
Okay, so reminder that this meeting was recorded and you'll be able to find it on our YouTube website with links and all the information that was posted in the chat. And then I'm going to turn it over to, oh my gosh, Sherri. Where did my brain go? And you're going to wrap it up for us. Thanks, Sherri.
All right, so somebody had asked about how you can help. I can tell you that I'm on the committee for the Spokane Homeless Connect. We need volunteers. I'm hoping David will be nice enough to post the email on the chat. And I can get that to anybody who might need it. But we are in need of volunteers. It is Wednesday, January 25th from 10 to 3.
Do you want to explain what it is?
Does everybody know? Does anybody not? Okay, so Spokane Homeless Connect is a large resource fair that is put together by all the organizations in town down at the convention center. We provide them with a meal. There's haircuts, there's pet care, there's clothing banks, food banks. Last year we had breast intentions so that homeless women and females could get bras, brand new bras. We had a Chaz, we had I can't remember who it was, but we had vaccinations for COVID that were available there. And then we served a spaghetti lunch, and we'll be doing that again this year. So if anybody's interested in helping with that, or if you're an organization that has not yet signed up as a vendor for a table, I encourage you to go to Spokane Homeless Connect 2023 and do a Google. You should pop up, because I don't know the exact website address. The other thing is if you live out in the Valley, or if you're interested in Valley stuff, we have the Greater Valley Support Network, which is a tiny version of Spokane Homeless Coalition. And it's all about work being done out in the Valley. And that is the second Thursday of the month at 9:30 at Opportunity Presbyterian Church on North Pines. So I have one other thing. If I could get everybody who is a committee member to come on up front. Come on, guys. That's you guys. Come on. I want to acknowledge all of you for all the hard work that they've done. They are awesome. And this committee is one of the most active. So I just want to give a heads up, everybody. Show of appreciation. And April, come on. All right, now, Miss Julie. Where'd she go?
Way in the back.
Come on down. Come on down. So we just want to show our appreciation for all your hard work, both from the league and the committee, because we appreciate you.
Thank you.
Are we good?
Right.
That's
Right
it.
on time.
Everyone for coming.
Huh? Right on time, yes.
Everyone here didn't hate me, so.
Yes, thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate both on Zoom and here.